Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. I'm here at Apex 2017 in San Diego, and I'm joined by Fern Abrams from IPC. Fern, thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure.
One of the things that leaps to mind from your badge is government relations. We have a new administration here in the US. They're talking a good story with respect to tech. What are you seeing as you start to explore what might happen and what might impact your members?
Well, clearly there's attention in this administration to the importance of the manufacturing sector for the economy and the impact that government regulations can have on manufacturing's viability. So from that aspect, we see a lot of positives and opportunity to work with the new administration, hopefully to advocate for our members for more pro-manufacturing policies. We also have had some concerns raised by our membership in terms of things they hear on the administration's agenda, particularly some of the immigration policies and some of the tariff policies are of concern to our members and thoughts that they are going to impact their business particularly heavily in the tech sector.
Yeah, and we see that as a challenge globally, whether we're here within Europe or particularly in Mexico at the moment. So some interesting challenges there. Conflict minerals have been on the agenda for a long time. What's the current status with respect to that area of
Well, there is an unsourced executive order that was floated, I think, just last week, and also Reuters has an article, again unsourced, so no opportunity for corroboration. Oh, I got that out. But the executive order would, if it's signed as is, would suspend the SEC rules that require the reporting of conflict minerals by SEC-listed companies for 2 years on the basis of national security, and that is included in the enabling Dodd-Frank legislation.
Okay, and is that something that you found or that was highlighted to you from members? How does that process work?
Well, we have undisclosed sources that leak those things to us. You know, that's all the popular trend.
Yeah.
That's what we're paid to do, is to gather information for our members. The Reuters article was in the press, so anybody can read that. I'm getting mixed feedback from the membership, which was a surprise to me. The majority of our members, for a long time since Dodd-Frank has been implemented, have been fairly vocal about their concerns. Twofold, really: the burden of complying with the conflict minerals regulations in the U.S., and then secondly, their continued concern that these regulations are not having their intended effect of addressing the human rights violations in the DRC. So, you know, our members are human beings, as we all are. They are deeply concerned by these human rights violations, but they question if this type of regulation directed at the top of the supply chain is really the best, or at this point they question if it's effective in any way. They don't, you know, to take their words, we don't mind spending money and time. We don't mind the burden. That's part of our, you know, that's part of what you take on as a manufacturer, but we'd like to believe it's accomplishing something, and that's where they really question the regulation. So from them, from some of them, welcome if the administration is going to look at that issue and re-examine those regulations. But a number two say to me, we're not sure a temporary suspension will help. We have systems in place. Our customers, some of the large consumer electronics OEMs, have been very vocal about their support for conflict-free and addressing human rights violations. Some of them were doing this before Dodd-Frank, and they're very clear we will do that after Dodd-Frank. And so that will continue to reverberate through the supply chain, and our members will continue to see conflict minerals obligations, whether the rules are suspended or not. And so they say to me, we're not sure, you know, new rules that are more effective would be great, but we're not sure if a suspension actually accomplishes anything.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I think it's great that question's asked. I think it's important when you have a regulation to just step back and say why, and will it actually be effective in addressing what needs to be addressed. And you know, that's true whether it's lead-free or any of these things. IPC is not just an American organization, you're a global organization. What's going on elsewhere in the world?
Well, to stick with our current topic, conflict minerals, the European Union has also been addressing legislation on conflict minerals. IPC has been very involved in that process. We've been a participant in the OECD conflict minerals and corporate social responsibility due diligence development since the pilot program was kicked off in 2012. We also have been lobbying and advocating on behalf of our members, both with the EU Commission and the Parliament. As you may remember, just a little history, the Commission drafted legislation, as is their role in Europe, for a voluntary conflict minerals program that was based on input that we and other industries gave them, that Dodd-Frank was very bureaucratic, very burdensome, and not effective. After the Commission put forward this voluntary legislation, the Parliament voted for mandatory legislation throughout, mandatory conflict minerals requirements throughout the supply chain. And last summer, in June, the Parliament and the Council of Ministers, which represent the member states of Europe, came to a political agreement that would include mandatory requirements for the importers and smelters of minerals and metals, but voluntary on down the supply chain. So this was, I think, a very sound compromise. It took into account what industry had been saying, that you really need to focus on the smelter. They're the ones buying the minerals from the mines. They have the most transparency, the knowledge, the control, and that's where the attention needs to focus. And by making it mandatory for those companies, which by the way include IPC members that import solder into Europe, that then that information can be passed down through the supply chain instead of the Dodd-Frank approach, which starts at the top and tries to trace back through the supply chain all the way through the the assembler, the component manufacturer, the distributor, all the way back to the smelter, to the mine. It's much less effective than starting
in the other direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're hopeful that this more reasoned approach, which is expected to be voted on in its final form by the Parliament during their upcoming plenary session in March, we're hopeful that this represents a model going forward of a better way to address the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because a lot of the discussion this week with IOM and Industry 4.0 is around traceability, and there are lots of benefits that very detailed traceability up and down the supply chain can give us.
I have heard, actually, we had a conversation in our Conflict Minerals Due Diligence Committee meeting yesterday, and they were talking about Dodd-Frank and input to the administration about what we'd like to see, and they said, it hasn't had the intended impacts at all, but we have gotten to know our supply chain better.
And that's a good thing. Fern, thanks very much for stopping by, and thanks for updating us.